strength is the core of all of hypertrophy gains. You know, I mean, if you want to get really big arms, you're going to have to be able to do strict bicep curls with 60 pounds like you do on those reverse inclines if you want 21-inch arms.
Benching.
Yeah.
Skip the squats. I don't like deadlifts.
It's the same thing with powerlifting. You know, you got one guy that's a really good squatter but doesn't want to mess with the bench. You got one guy that's a really good bencher but doesn't want to train the deadlift. And
sorry about that, my man.
oh, no problem, brother. So yeah,
volume? Is that volume okay?
Yeah, sounds great.
Okay. All right. So we were just talking about the one aspect. No go. We'll get this down. We'll get this down better. So we're gonna get all this. So we were talking about how people that are so-called experts or were something at one point couldn't maintain it.
Yeah.
And not only not maintain it, they teaching people how to train in a different way.
Yep.
Than when they got to be a success.
Yeah. I'll tell you what I think that is.
Okay.
I think it's because the hardest point of us, you and I, are good at helping other people because we can step out of ourselves to help others and put them in the position that they need to be to succeed. That's a big difference. And what happens is that I try, when I go help my fire departments or special forces guys or military, is I try to bring them a component of what I know to make them better at themselves versus trying to go and limit people based on what my deficiencies are or what your deficiencies are. And that can be very difficult because then you have to be okay with your shortcomings or maybe how you did things incorrectly. So then what happens is what's good for one's good for all. And I never try to train people that way. I just try to show them the methods and make it as easily explainable as possible to try to show them that, you know, me and you both know that the fastest way for us to get better is to train our biggest shortcomings. Right? But that's not how a lot of people got better. They train their strengths and avoid their weaknesses.
Benching.
Yeah.
Skip the squats. I don't like deadlifts, so skip that. Yeah, that whole concept of going and continuously making their best body part even greater.
Yep.
And letting their flaws decrease even more.
Yep. And it's the same thing with powerlifting. You know, you got one guy that's a really good squatter but doesn't want to mess with the bench. You got one guy that's a really good bencher but doesn't want to train the deadlift and doesn't want to put the same lift. My worst lift, based on how I'm built to bench press big weights, is my deadlift. But my deadlift taught me the most on how to train.
It's so shortcomings teach you more stuff about the other. Yeah.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Now you're very well educated. You got a couple master's degrees. Talk about that.
Well, the master's degree is in sports biomechanics under Dr. Kramer, which has been co-authors of Science and Practice of Strength Training with Vladimir Zatsiorsky for the last 3 editions, which is probably the Bible of training. You go into it, and it just every time. Actually, I was researching that book today. I'm doing a advanced training protocol for the NSCA, which is the governing body for collegiate strength coaches and pro strength coaches. It's the gold standard for certs, and I was actually going over that book today to do an advanced training protocol for the NSCA, an actual presentation. So my stuff was very interesting because I showed up at school as this really strong, out of high school meathead, knew everything, right? And then gets introduced to Louis Simmons, and he starts showing me max effort method and speed. I didn't understand any of that. I didn't understand how to apply physics to training.
Right.
I just thought lift weights, get bigger.
Right.
You know, linear periodization was the only way to train. And when I met Louis, it kind of blew my mind, and I come back with all this knowledge, and Dr. Kramer, you know, which is, you know, probably one of the smartest guys in the United States as far as training goes. He's the head of the neurological department over at OSU now. So that gives you at Ohio State. So I come back and he starts laughing at me. And I'm like, what are you laughing at? You know, and he hands me the first book of Zatsiorsky made in 1994, which references studies from 1950s and 60s. And I'm just like, man, this is not new. This is old. And that really started to spark my mind on how to train smarter, how to use physics as my friend versus my enemy, and You have to eventually learn how to either outsmart your growth, learn how to grow by being smarter, or learn how to be strong by being smarter, which can be different goals. But as you and I both know, that strength is the core of all of hypertrophy gains. You know, I mean, if you want to get really big arms, you're going to have to be able to do strict bicep curls with 60 pounds like you do on those reverse inclines if you want 21-inch arms. I don't see a way around it doing it with 20-pound dumbbells.
And yeah, I agree with you. But I love that you're so educated, but then you apply all that to the experience that you've done.
Yeah.
Talk about your records that you've set through your career.
The first record that I set was every teenage record in Indiana in the USAPL from 1993 to 1999, which was my last teenage year. Then went to the junior ranks at the college division and broke all the American records in the USAPL, and then placed third in men's nationals at 23 years old with over a 2,000-pound total as still a junior. Then my first pro meet, I was one of the youngest guys to squat 900 at under 300 pounds. And then the bench press started to take off. And in 2008, I broke the all-time world record total in equipped lifting. 2011, I broke the all-time squat record at 1,200, which I was the lightest guy ever to do it in 2011. And then in 2012, I switched to raw, became the 13th full powerlifter to bench 600. Including Bill Kazmaier and Ted Arcidi and a bunch of the greats. And then broke the all-time world record in the squat at 832 and then raised it to 865.
I love it.
And that's just in a belt.
Just a couple records here and there. Something you and I had, and so it's changed our mindset quite a bit. We've been around some of the greatest lifters and people, and the brightest people when it comes to lifting.
Yeah.
Since our teenage years.
Yeah.
So it's, I know for me, I find it kind of sometimes hard to fathom because I was with Doug Furness, Doyle Kennedy, Jeff Magruder, and I'm a 13, 14-year-old kid, and I'm seeing these guys do the lifts that they did. For you guys that are watching this, if you just check that, these weren't just strong guys. These are the strongest guys in the world.
Yeah.
And some of the most massive guys in the world.
Yeah.
But it set my mindset to 900 squat is something that you should be able to do.
It's achievable.
Yeah. A 600 bench at 242 for a guy is achievable.
Yep.
So these numbers for me were my ceiling, I guess you would say.
Yeah. And I think that's where we share even more commonality because I was trained by a guy named Tim Smith, which didn't do much after his juniors, but bench pressed 500 at 181 raw.
Yeah.
And so I walk into the gym at 13 years old, and I had been messing around with myself for a year or so before that. And I see this guy doing 315 for 25 reps. And I'm just like, holy shit, this dude is jacked. Yeah, and he's 185 pounds at the time. And I watched him do a 500-pound bench, and I asked if I could train with him. And I thought at first that he was being kind of arrogant to me. And he said, I'll train you when you can do a pull-up.
Oh, so I actually like that mentality.
Yeah, he wouldn't let me bench press with him until I could do a pull-up. And I was a 185-pound 13-year-old. So that's
so we graduated around the same weight, but we were also that same weight. Is that pre-puberty for you?
That was probably, I would say, starting puberty.
Yeah,
at that
starting.
point. Yeah, I was 170 pounds in 7th grade, and then 189 in 8th grade, right before I started high school.
There you go. So I was 176 before starting.
Yeah, so we're really close. So I see him. He tells me that I can't bench with him until I can do a pull-up. And I thought at first, I'm like, well, what he was doing was actually testing me to see if I was going to do something that I didn't really want to do. I saw the bench press, but underneath-wise, he goes, that was some of the smartest information I ever gave somebody because I learned from a young age that my back had to be strong before my front.
Yeah, I like his approach. Again, it goes back to those fundamentals that we were taught as kids that you got to work both sides. The things that you want to do and the things you don't want to do.
Yeah.
and you can't run away from the things you don't want to do. And
No.
it's the consistency of doing both, not the consistency of doing the fun stuff, not the consistency of eating on the days you want to eat, the training on the days you want to train.
Yep.
It's the consistency on doing the things you don't want to train.
Yep.
The days you don't want to lift, the days that you have to stay on the diet, even though you're rushing around. That stuff.
Oh, God. And, I tell people all the time that ask me, who's the most mentally tough guy, one of the most mentally tough guys I've ever met? And it's by far and away you, because I have had to come in and literally have my Cheerios, meaning bring my shit, to be able to keep up with what you do. And I know you're coming in fasted, or I know you're coming in when I just had 800 or 1,000 calories and you had 250 or some shit. And I'm just like, holy hell. it's you have a completely different mental toughness that I don't think ever even comes across. I think people see what you eat and maybe you post it and then they see you train. They don't understand how much I have seen you at a fasted state and still do amazing things.
Thanks, brother. Thank you.
Yeah, it's impressive as shit. I mean, it really drove me to start realizing how much I could train as hard as I'm training now. And it took me a year or two because, I was more of a power lifter, to start realizing how much more dense I could be if I could control my eating along with my intensity of my training. And it took a year and a half of a transition point to where I know every time you see me about twice a year that I look a little harder and a little denser every year. And it's not my training style. We train very similar. It's learning from you on the dieting and the mental toughness of being able to come in on low carb and not really bother me at all.
I've loved that too. And watching your transformation on the way you've eaten and changed over the last couple of years, again, it's cool to watch.
Yeah.
Because yes, you're a power lifter, but you got these little joints and stuff like that. So you got these massive legs and these little knees. But it's cool that you took this huge physique and you just slowly dieted down.
Yep.
And you're so dense and so hard.
Yeah.
And it's that muscularity that I can appreciate, that those years of density. And it's funny because I think you and me are like the same ways. People don't realize how big until they stand next to us.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was funny, when we had your little thing for your Titan crew, when I was out there, what was that, September, October?
Yeah.
And I was out there, and it's just funny because we stand next to guys that train really hard too. And it was funny because them standing next to us, all that crew was like, I just had no idea how big you guys were. It's funny. I remember one of the biggest compliments I ever got was in 2016 was my first year speaking at the Swiss conference, which is in Toronto. And if anybody is listening, that is one of the best conferences in the world to go to for information. Kazmaier came up to me and goes, "You are one of the densest fucking guys I've ever seen." And coming from Kazmaier, that was impressive, because he's like, he could not stop touching my quad and my shoulder. And he's like, "How are you staying that dense, man?" I'm like, "I'm just training and not getting hurt, and doing everything smart." So